Well, let's head now to Paris, where European affairs analyst Stefan de Vries is standing by for us. Stefan, what do we make of these stronger presidential powers? It's about to get stronger. How will the Europeans and his NATO allies react to this?
Well, of course, Erdogan changed the job of the Turkish president from a symbolic chief of state into an authoritarian autocrat. And the European Union and the NATO really have to rely on this autocrat because for the European Union, of course, we have an important deal to maintain the Syrian refugees in Turkey. The European Union pays around 6 billion euros to Turkey to contain the migrant issue. So that's an important partner. But also, of course, for NATO, due to its geographical position, Turkey is a very important ally between the West and the Arab world. Now, Erdogan has been flirting recently with Russia. He has been buying military stuff from Russia, so that's already a threat to the alliance. But also, Turkey is needed because of the fight against the so-called Islamic State. So a very difficult position for the European Union and the NATO, but unfortunately they have to deal with Erdogan, and there's actually, well, no other solution.
Yeah, indeed. So Turkey is a partner on some very important issues that concern Europe as well. But the West has been very critical of Erdogan. But he still seems to get a lot of support from the Turks who live in Europe. How can we explain that?
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. In Europe, there are around 4 to 6 million Turks living mainly in Germany, the Benelux and France. And they were also allowed to vote yesterday. About a third of those people showed up at the polls in those countries. And we see a huge support for Erdogan. About 65% in Belgium, 65% also in France and Germany. It looks like these people who are usually, well, most of them are born actually in Europe. They support a conservative leader, a very authoritarian leader, and maybe it also reflects the rise of the anti-immigrant parties in those countries. Maybe the Turks living there, they have sympathy for a strong leader, as we've seen is also the case in, for instance, Hungary with Viktor Orban, or even in the United States with Donald Trump. So the massive support for Erdogan on the Turkish mainland, on the European mainland, basically shows the huge polarization, not only in the European society, but actually in politics in general.
All right, thank you for that. European affairs analyst Stefan de Vries, thanks. Italy said it was, quote, decidedly satisfied coming out of talks on migration in Brussels yesterday. But there's some suggestion many issues are still on the table ahead of a bloc-wide summit later this week. All eyes in Brussels were on two figures, new Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, whose government has adopted a hardline policy on immigration, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who faces a tough political challenge at home because of her years-old open-door migration rules. A new survey suggests that divisions within Angela Merkel's conservative bloc, they're widening with the anti-immigrant AfD party on the rise. Well, our correspondent Jessica Saltz joins me now to discuss this. Jessica, Merkel, she was a bit optimistic coming out of that summit, but is that well-founded?
Well, Tessa, the headline in Der Spiegel, the political magazine this morning, saying Angela Merkel fighting to save her chancellorship. Certainly we feel that Angela Merkel's leadership is on the line with this issue. She's really been pushed into a corner by her Bavarian sister party, the CSU, on the issue of migration. And there are reports coming out of Bavaria that the CSU is bolstering their police forces there, ready to spring into action next week and turn migrants away from the border there if Angela Merkel is not able to come up with what they consider to be a viable solution to the migration crisis. So certainly the pressure is certainly on. And we only heard broad strokes from Angela Merkel yesterday after this mini summit in Brussels. Yes, she spoke on issues such as strengthening security forces at the external borders of the EU, something her critics are calling for, but this won't be enough to silence them. Angela Merkel will be meeting with her CDU party in Berlin today to discuss migration. She has broad support from the CDU, and it is thought over the next few days she will be trying to make steps forward on bilateral levels by speaking to EU leaders, such as with the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, who is expected to come to Berlin tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course, as we see her under pressure, this is to the advantage of, the AfD party, as this new poll suggests. Does Merkel have reason to fear what the polls are saying?
Well, Tessa, this is not only threatening her Conservative alliance with the CSU, but this is really weighing heavily on public opinion. The most recent opinion polls from yesterday show that the CDU-CSU alliance has slipped to 31%. This is their lowest result since November. Now, this coalition government of Conservatives and Social Democrats took an embarrassingly long 6 months to form by March. And the feeling in Germany is that since then, these parties have spent more time squabbling with each other than making progress. Certainly German people I speak to say, yes, the migration issue is important, but these parties are spending too much time discussing it when they should be focusing on more important domestic issues. So this is also worrying for Merkel, that public opinion is affected by this, and public opinion is also a worrying sign for the CSU party. They are also slipping in opinion polls regionally in Bavaria, ahead of what for them is a very critical regional election coming up in October.
All right, thank you for that, Jessica Salt in Berlin there. Thanks. Now, Donald Trump has derided U.S. immigration policy as, quote, laughed at all over the world. Well, as we showed in theCUBE last week, pictures of separated families have sparked protests at the U.S. border. But the U.S. president, he's renewed his call for people entering the country illegally to be sent back without seeing a judge. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell has more.
During the president's motorcade ride to his Virginia golf course today, he fired off on Twitter, ignoring existing legal rights for undocumented immigrants. We must immediately, with no judges or court cases, bring them back from where they came. The president's edict fails to recognize constitutional due process, long-established case law that grants that protection to non-citizens. But that did not stop the idea from bubbling this week.
I don't want judges, I want border security. I don't want judges, I want border patrol, I want ICE.
The president vents his frustration at Congress after House Republicans could not decide on legislation to address the border crisis, and he made Democrats his target.
It's the Democrats' fault, but it wouldn't be their fault for long if they sat down with us. We could make a deal so quickly.
Democrats, including some who made trips to the border this week, argue their party has been kept out of negotiations, an impasse that fuels the campaign year fight. Illinois Democrat Luis Gutierrez.
It's wrong to separate babies, to use cruel, inhumane policies in order to gin up your political base. And it seems like it's working.
In a new interview with Christian media outlet TBN, the president says he wants to impose a financial punishment on migrants' home countries in Central America.
You take a country like Honduras or so many others, they're sending people into our country by the thousands. I think we should stop giving them money.
But just days ago, Vice President Pence met the leader of Honduras here at the White House and declared a strong partnership.
Kelly O'Donnell reporting there. Now, American taxi app Uber is in a London court today where it will appeal a decision which saw the firm denied an operating license for the British capital. It comes after TfL, that's the Public Transport Authority in London, chose not to renew the taxi firm's license over concerns about public safety last September. Uber say that they have made significant changes to the app, as well as appointing independent directors to their firms. The court's decision is expected later this week. And still to come for you on the program, we have more on Saudi women finally getting the green light to get behind the wheel as the law banning them from driving is overturned. That and more after the break. Our top story on Good Morning Europe. Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his AK party have claimed victory in Turkey's presidential and parliamentary elections. The opposition hasn't officially conceded yet, but says it will continue its democratic struggle, quote, whatever the result. It's the first round win he was hoping for, and it gives him sweeping new powers. It is 2 months since Hawaii's Mount Kilauea volcano started erupting, and there are no signs yet that it's about to start slowing down. Euronews' Nick Wells has the update.
Hawaii's Kilauea volcano is showing no signs of letting up, with lava flows again creeping dangerously close to homes. Volcanologists said an explosion at the summit late on Saturday produced energy equivalent to a magnitude 5.3 earthquake. The eruption, which began at the end of April, is the most destructive in the United States since Mount St. Helens in 1980, which killed nearly 60 people. No one has died in Hawaii, but at least 600 homes have been destroyed.
Nigeria's Central Plateau state has seen numerous acts of violence, that's according to the authorities. With many clashes between Muslim herders and Christian farmers, at least 86 people have died and some 50 homes destroyed. And there are fears that the long-running competition for resources may be about to become more extreme and bring even more unrest to another region of the country. Well, it's been a mostly peaceful election campaign in Zimbabwe so far until this weekend when a ruling party rally was bombed. No one was killed, but some 50 people were injured. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe. In case you missed it, the rumors that Egyptian footballer Mo Salah is considering quitting his national team because he's angry about being used as a political symbol in Chechnya and the online campaign that's already begun to convince him to stay. We'll be back after a short break.
Euronews also brings all the latest international news to your PC, mobile, tablet and smartwatch. Euronews. All views.
The Europe Weather Report is brought to you by Incredible India. The Europe Weather Report was brought to you by Incredible India.
You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back to the program. History has been made in Saudi Arabia with women finally being given the green light to get behind the wheel. As the last country in the world to lift a ban on female motorists, it was an extraordinary event, as NBC's Kelly Kubiela reports.
A victory lap for women's rights. Across Saudi Arabia, women hit the road for the first time, ending a decades-old ban.
It's really historic, not only for Saudi women, for every woman. We achieved something.
Until now, women relied on drivers or male relatives to get to work and school, risking a fine, even arrest for driving themselves.
It will be easier to get around whenever I want, and to go wherever I want. Financially, it will take less of my paycheck.
The move, part of the young Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's massive reform effort.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Women like Asil Al-Hamad can now start their own businesses without a man's permission. She's an interior designer with a passion for fast cars.
We're so happy because women have proven themselves in many aspects. It's nice to be in control and to be in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah.
Women here still don't have complete control over their own lives. They need a man's permission to get a passport, travel abroad, or get married.
Even as the government opens the roads to women, it's cracking down on women's rights activists. Yet many women told me the country is changing for the better.
We're happy and we want more now.
You want more now?
Yes.
For Saudi women, it's full speed ahead. Kelly Kobiella, NBC News, Riyadh.
Now, there were goals galore on Sunday as several teams booked their places in the World Cup knockout phase. Tecumbo Solako has all the results.
England's Lions put on their dancing feet to celebrate as their team made history in the best of ways for a change. Harry Kane was the hat-trick hero as England fired 6 past Panama to record their biggest ever win in a World Cup. What's more, the result means England now match their Group G rivals Belgium on goal difference, so both sides will play for top spot on Thursday, knowing the winner could eventually face favourites Brazil in the quarter-finals. It's all over now for Panama, but their fans were simply delighted the team scored a goal in their first ever World Cup. From tears of joy to tears of sadness, Poland's World Cup campaign is over. They crashed out after being routed by Colombia 3-0, which revives their hopes of progressing. It all now goes down to the wire in Group H after a 2-all draw between Japan and Senegal, arguably Russia's favourite teams because of their fans' clean-up campaigns in their stadiums.
Tecumbo Solako reporting there. Now, there are rumors that one of the World Cup's most famous popular players, Egyptian striker Mohamed Salah, he's considering quitting the national team. But that's after he was used as a political symbol in Chechnya. Alex, tell us about this story.
Tessa, Mohamed Salah and the Egyptian team are staying in Chechnya. They're being hosted in that region for the World Cup. And look at this picture from a dinner event Friday night. Mohamed Salah, he is a legend. Few people you can call a legend. He's one of them, I'm sure. But in this picture, to his left, we have Razman Kadyrov, and he is the Chechen leader with a very controversial human rights record, particularly